Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. This is The Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. Joining me in studio, our executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Hey, all.
Today is our weekly culture and entertainment episode. What is on the show today? Legendary audiobook narrator Natalie Naudus will be here to talk about her upcoming debut novel, Gay the Pray Away. But up first, Ross Mathews, Emmy-winning television host and producer, and along with his husband, Dr. Wellington Garcia Mathews, who has served in the field of education for over a decade as a primary teacher, assistant principal, director of curriculum and instruction, associate director of ENL and equity in New York. Can you tell I worked in higher education and I love nerding out about education? Both are here to discuss their new debut children's picture book that came out this week. It's called Tio and Tio, the Ring Bearers, lusciously illustrated by Tommy Doyle. Ross and Dr. Garcia Mathews, welcome to The Gailey Show.
We're so happy to be with you, and I love educators. Hello, I married one.
Absolutely. So I know you all were on CBS Morning Show this week, so clearly this is a step up, but we're really glad to have you here. On a side, I'd be remiss not to say that, Ross, we didn't meet you, but last year you hosted the GLAAD Media Awards.
Yes.
And we were there on a other show that we produce and executive produce. So I was like, oh my goodness, we're going to get to see Ross and talk to him today. So it's really great to meet you.
I'm so happy to chat with you. You know, I love Minnesota. I do. I go there a lot. I love it. And we're just so proud of this little book that we made too. The fact that we get to go around and talk about it and spread the word makes us so happy. So thank you for asking us on.
Absolutely. So the book is based on the true life story of your marriage. 3-year anniversary this May 7th. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And your nephews, Andy and Evan, who were your ring bearers. So maybe, Dr. Wellington, we can start with you about sharing what you saw prior to the ceremony, how they were practicing to be ring bearers.
So this was actually real life. It's organic. It actually came out of just, me witnessing both boys practicing with my brother-in-law, walking down the aisle. They were so nervous and they took it so seriously. I was just astounded by just how they were acting, and I was like, I thought I should be more nervous than they were. And then I remember telling Ross about this, and he just like lit up and said, wow. And I said, as an educator, one of the things that I realized that those are teachable moments. It really shows that these little kids matter, and that if they weren't there, we wouldn't have had a great ceremony, right? To brag about. And so
I was just sort of struck too when Wellington told me that they were practicing walking in unison and doing that, all of that. I thought, oh my God, I understood that they weren't nervous necessarily to be in front of people, but they just wanted to do a good job for us, for the family. And I think both of us just thought that there's such a universal message there of wanting to matter, wanting to contribute, wanting to be seen, wanting to be of value. And so when we started thinking about a story, Wellington was like, there is so much there in terms of takeaway for educators to read kids in the classrooms or parents to read their children. And so we thought, well, I'm a storyteller. He's an educator. Let's see what we can whip up. And thankfully, the people at Penguin Random House said yes. And Tommy Doyle, you said lush. The illustrations are so beautiful. We're so proud to have worked with him. And the book really speaks for itself. We really are. I think today is the first day we can step back and look at it and go, look what we did.
As we've talked to children's picture book authors on the show, we've learned that the writing process can be quite a challenge because you have a very short amount of words to convey these big themes and entire worlds. And it is a perfect marriage, if you will, of your expertise, Dr. Wellington, as an educator, Ross, your experience as a storyteller and comedian. Walk us through then your writing process of working together and how you came up with the story.
I learned so much from working with Wellington because I've written a couple books. I know how to write. I know how to do this. But in terms of writing for children, moments of takeaway, moments to have a discussion. Wellington at one point said to me, you're leaving a lot of meat on the bone. There's a lot you're not doing. And so then I watched him do his thing. And can you talk to him about how you turned the idea into a teachable moment?
Yeah, so I just looked at it from the educator's lens, and also understanding what children love and what children need, understanding that they love predictions, and when to stop to ensure that you can have these discussions. and even beefing up the vocabulary in the text, and also even throwing some science facts in there. Just because I felt the more that we're able to capture in these, small pages, the better it would be for us as teachers or as parents to kind of just go from there and say, you're always looking for a book in the classroom to teach them something. So this one is about responsibility, about having autonomy and showing up for the family that loves you. And so it was just one of those moments that I realized that, like, him being a natural storyteller and also the hilarious Ross Matthews. He's like the pun master. And so it was just an easy thing for us to come together and really, push this out. And
it was fun to do it together.
I imagine. I was going to ask about that. So, like, in writing it, the vocabulary choices that came in there. And I'm also curious if you can tell a little bit more, like, what are the learning objectives that you hope that teachers are having with students as they're going along and sort of pausing the conversations that they're going to have with their students?
So I feel that one of the big, universal message that we were trying to do is ensuring that they matter, right? That these moments, these small moments, no matter how small you think they are in this whole scheme of it all, you become the star, right? And so this book specifically, we actually had our students, I'm not my students, my nephews, we call them interns because they were so helpful in this whole process. They gave us so many notes. They were very much adamant that their voice came through, right?
And we were adamant as well. I mean, like I said earlier on CBS Mornings, you can't write a book about empowering children and then not take their notes when they have them. Mm-hmm. And their notes were so hilarious. From why does dad have hair? Dad's bald. to really profound and sort of like, we wouldn't say it that way. That's not how we felt in that moment. And so we took literally every note and changed the text of the book, the illustrations, so that it would match up with what their life experience was as well.
And also, just to answer that question about, teachers, as an educator, one of the things that we really strive for in books is to have mirrors and windows, right? So mirrors in that they're able to see themselves in the text, but also windows from different perspectives, right? To learn from someone else. So that was the whole basis of it all. Mm-hmm. To be a mirror and a window for children.
It was our story, but we wanted it to be universal. We wanted everyone who read it to relate to it.
I have a question about that, but I also want to come back to, so how did this work with the notes? Like, did you read it to your nephews and then they gave you notes, or how did that?
We gave them a copy and we said, take this home and let us know if you have any thoughts. Thinking, how cute if they have a thought. Wouldn't that be darling? And then they came back with printed out, and every page they wrote in pencil had notes on it, and they sat down at our dining table and they said, okay, page 1. And we just, at first we started laughing, and then it was like, okay, take it seriously. Let's go. You charged them with this. You said, let us know. And they took it very seriously, but they had the same approach to the wedding too. Mm-hmm. I love this about these kids. They know that their thoughts have value, that their point of view has value. I didn't have that when I was a kid. I did not have that. I wasn't that delusional until I was in my mid-teens. But I'm sort of kidding. But like, all kids should feel that valued. Yeah. That their thought matters. That their voice matters. That they matter.
You're talking about the universalism of it, and I'm not from the Dominican Republic or from Mexico. I'm an Armenian American, and I just really appreciated the commitment to showcasing a bilingual and bicultural family. This is absolutely one of the books that I would have loved to have had as a kid, bilingual, gay uncles. Did you find, speaking of inner children, did you find writing it spoke to both of your inner childs?
We, throughout the whole wedding process, not so much the writing of the book, but the wedding process, both of us were reflecting constantly on
what does it look like?
What does it look like? Because we didn't, you hear the cliche of like little girls dreaming about their Prince Charming one day, imagining what their wedding would be like. I can tell you, and I think I speak for a lot of people of this generation, gay men and women, gay people across all genders. We didn't really picture our weddings because they were not an option. So it's not, when people ask, is it like you pictured as a little kid? Girl, I didn't picture this as a little kid. I think that is a really interesting thing. What a beautiful thing now that we can have these weddings, we can celebrate our love and they can be official. And but it's not something I dreamt about.
Same.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with husbands Ross Matthew, Emmy-winning television host and producer, and Dr. Wellington Garcia Matthews, educator, assistant principal, and adjunct professor, about their new children's book, Tio and Tio. I have to ask then, did Andy and Evan hide your rings in their football soccer cleats?
We didn't find out about till later, but you'll notice on that page when they're hiding the rings and finding that. And I love where they go into sort of a fantasy place of what could happen if they don't put it in the right spot. A parent could grab it. A parrot could drop it into a whale's blowhole, but you'll notice the parents mommy and poppy are keeping an eye on the kids. And that is what happened in real life. They said, okay, hide the rings, you're in charge. But they knew where the boys were putting things. You have to keep an eye.
No offense to Drew Barrymore, who wrote the foreword. When I first read it, though, I wanted to jump right into the story, and I skipped the foreword. So when I came back and read it and discovered Drew Barrymore was your flower girl?
Yeah, she really was our flower girl.
I recommend her if you can get her.
Yeah, she's great. Turns out she really is. Well, she's like our sister. I get to do the show with her, the Drew Barrymore show, every single day. When I started, it was we just finished season 5, so it's been 5 years ago. And in that time, we've really become family, where any weekend you're going to see us, in like upstate New York in an antique shop somewhere. You're going to find us. We spend so much time together. And it was on the show when we were just talking about the wedding. I was planning the wedding, and she asked me who was going to be our flower girl. And I was like, why, you want the job? And she was like, are you serious? Oh my God, Rossi, I would love it. And she really showed up. She showed up in Puerto Vallarta. She was our flower girl. She tossed the petals. She spoke. She's that kind of human that shows up. And I'm telling you, the message of the book is we all matter, and showing up is so valuable when it comes to family. Well, she's family, and she showed up.
Wonderful. We're going to have to fit in a quick break here. We are including links in our show notes and on our website of how you can order your very own copy of Tio and Tio, the Ring Bearers. We're going to have more with Ross and Dr. Garcia Matthews on the flip side of this very short break. Stay tuned. You're listening to The Gailey Show. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. It is 21 minutes past the hour. We're here with husbands Ross Matthews, Emmy-winning television host and producer, and Dr. Wellington Garcia Matthews, educator, assistant principal, and adjunct professor, about their new children's picture book, Tio and Tio, The Ring Bearers, illustrated by Tommy Doyle. Jim, executive producer here with me. Did you have a question?
When we have major celebrities, I'm only allowed one question. So here's my one.
Well, it was in my contract, Jim. You just get this one, so I hope it's good.
Well, no, I understand that. Yeah, that's good judgment on your part. I would say I always look for surprises. So the surprise I'm curious about was, did you learn something from this process, either the wedding or the book, where you thought, oh, wow, I did not see that coming, or I was not expecting that? Or is there something that you think would surprise us as readers?
Oh, that's great. Well, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how to speak to children. Honestly, like, I'm the baby. I was the youngest in the family. I don't have children. I was a child for almost 18 years. I've met tens of children, and I know our nephews. And Wellington has been in the classroom for 2 decades. He's now an administrator. He's been a director of curriculum, picking the curriculum in schools. And so just watching him and his knowledge of how children learn, it actually reminded me when I was a child, and it's been a minute. Okay. So I was surprised at how removed I was from that world. And it's one of my favorite things in the world is seeing the person I love use their superpower. And I love this man. He is so smart and so good and kind to me, but he also is so good at what he does. And for me, seeing him in his element was I don't know if surprise is the right word, but I didn't know to expect it. You know?
Yeah, for me, what was surprising was just how easy it was, to just write this, and for him to just be so open to just the process that that it takes to actually build something like this. And then we also included a lot of little Easter eggs in there for the adults that were reading it. So please read it, and you'll see what we're talking about.
Oh yeah, when you read it to your kids, you'll have little moments of like, oh, I see what they're doing.
Can we come to the illustrations just for a moment? Because Tommy Doyle, fantastic. I'm curious did you give input to Tommy, or was it just a beautiful surprise? Like you just got the galleys and it was like, woof, there it is.
We did have input and back and forth. But I'll tell you, when we wrote the book, we pictured it in our minds, and it was based on a real life, true story of the ring bearers at our wedding. And so I already had an expectation of what it would look like in my head, but very rarely does it ever translate and equal what you picture. Very rarely is it as good as what you picture. When we got Tommy Doyle's illustrations sent to us,
we lost our minds.
It's better than I ever could have imagined, because it was so true to life. It captured how lush Mexico is, how rich the colors are. It captured the diversity of our family and our wedding guests and the people who were there. It captured the energy of our nephews, and it captured the love of our family. And I know that they're just illustrations, but this book lives or dies on the illustrations. You have to feel like the reader must feel like they have entered a world. And I think Tommy Doyle, who is so great, had a real challenge because he had to base it on an idea that was already in our heads. We had already seen this play out. And he matched reality. And to me, it's reality plus. That's what Tommy did.
They're absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
As you can imagine, on a show called The Gailey Show, we do talk about book bans a lot, where beautiful, loving, and funny books such as Tio and Tio are removed from school libraries. Share with us, as authors, the importance of having picture books that show all types of families, including LGBTQ families.
Yeah, I have to say, we were aware of it while we were writing. Now, when you read this book, it is not a political book. It just is set at our wedding. It's about two little boys showing up for their family. But we knew, I don't think anyone's blind to what's going on in the world. And that's so heartbreaking, because I think a lot of the books that are being banned without being read, So I would challenge anybody who thinks they can't relate to this story to read it. And I promise you, this universal tale of wanting to contribute will resonate with you. But the importance of books like this and importance of these kind of stories, Wellington speaks to, and I think he spoke to a little bit ago, about the windows and mirrors philosophy in what he does. And can you just elaborate just slightly on that?
Yeah. So again, it's just this whole concept of ensuring that when you're writing something, it can either be a window, a different perspective. It can be a different culture that you're looking out into, or it can be a mirror where it's really reflecting you in it, right? So part of the actual story that we wrote was reflecting our cultures, our blending of both of our cultures into one story. And it's just it's a window for others who probably are not from our cultural backgrounds, but can now say, wow, I've learned something about that culture.
And an example of that, one of the mirrors that's in there that I haven't really seen before, is not my life experience, but Wellington grew up in Dominican Republic, so did his sister. But the boys, the nephews, his sister's kids, grew up in Connecticut. So they're first generation American, and they don't speak Spanish. And so their mother is trying to impart some Spanish and using this trip to Mexico to remind them of words they've learned and use some of the Spanish. And for kids of immigrants, that are first generation, now they can see that is now reflected in this book. And I don't know that I'd seen that before, you know? And so those little things were so purposeful, trying to fill voids that hadn't been filled before.
As a person who had a parent who immigrated to the States and having to learn that language and go back and have to, you know, and interact with that, it's so resonated, even though our experiences were different. There are those universal themes, and so it's such a delight to have read it, and congratulations on having it out in the world. It is Tio and Tio, the Ring Bearers. Ross Matthews, Dr. Wellington Garcia Matthews, thank you for joining us here on The Gailey Show.
Thank you for a beautiful, thoughtful conversation. We really enjoyed our time with you. And next time I'm in Minneapolis, I'm taking you to the saloon and we're getting tater tots. Understood?
Understood. No argument on our end.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We are including links in our show notes and on our website, am950radio.com, for you to order your own copy of Tio and Tio, the Ring Bearers, as well as links to follow them, the authors, on Instagram. We are going to take a break. When we come back, Natalie Naudus and her debut YA novel, Gay the Prey Away, fantastic title. We'll be talking with her. You are listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm your host, John Parker. It is 33 minutes past the hour. Joining me now is Natalie Naudus. Natalie is an Audie and Earphones award-winning audiobook narrator of over 400 titles. That's right, 400. Now, her debut YA novel, Gay the Prey Away, is coming out on May 20th. Just in time for Pride. Natalie, welcome to The Gailey Show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, let's start with the plot of Gay the Prey Away. Lovely title. Really enjoyed it on multiple levels. So share with our readers what they can expect when they turn to page 1.
Yeah, this is a book that's based loosely on my childhood, growing up in a Christian homeschooling cult. And it's about a girl who's growing up in that environment and comes across a queer book at the library and steals it, brings it home, reads it, and starts to realize that maybe there's more to life and herself than she's been taught there is. And a cute girl shows up at homeschooling group and they fall in love, and she has to kind of untangle who she is and what she's going to do with her life.
As you can imagine, on The Gailey Show, we talk a lot about book bans here and everything. Even in, blue Minnesota, we have, things going on. The ACLU is filing a lawsuit just as we speak against a particular school. And so I love how you are depicting the importance of libraries in this, in your novel. And when you say you're considering it sort of like part memoir, did that actually happen to you? Like, did you go into a library, find a queer book and steal it?
No, I didn't come across queer books until I was an adult, but I've done a lot of thinking about how much queer books helped me understand myself and how much I wish I had come across one sooner. And I think that when I left home and started meeting queer people and it opened up the world for me, I think that my mind was more flexible because I had spent so much time reading books as a kid. And even though I hadn't read a queer book, I spent so much time at the library, and I think it kept my brain open and empathetic to other people and other experiences.
Can you share, as much as you would like to, about what that growing up experience was for you, and how that, you wove that into the novel?
Yeah, I grew up IBLP, which if anyone's heard of the documentary Shiny Happy People, which was the Duggar family and all the scandals along with them. I grew up in that homeschooling environment. So it was very strict, girls weren't allowed to wear pants. Children were discouraged from going to college. Women were supposed to just get married and have a quiver full of children. It was the quiverful movement. What I was allowed to read was strictly regulated. We were only supposed to read or consume media that was through the program vetted by parents. But I was allowed to go to the library, and I spent a lot of time there reading as a kid. And that was like my escape from the way that I was being raised. And I think made me ready as an adult to open up my world and change the way that I was thinking about things.
So you're sort of in a more extreme, like cult setting when you're reading these books, and I know that there are various degrees of that. I did not have that experience, but even going to my own library and finding these books and either not being able to take them home, the queer ones, because for obvious reasons, or just saving them. I've had folks on here who have talked about the same thing in your novel about folks stealing a book because they just couldn't believe that it even existed.
Yeah.
How did that then how did that impact as you were then coming of age, getting closer to 18, and how you were shaping the decisions that you wanted to make as an adult?
My family was not as strict as a lot of my friends, so I was allowed to go to college, and going to college really was eye-opening for me. And it, in some ways, made sense why so many of my friends' families were saying college will corrupt your children, because it certainly corrupted me when I showed up and I started meeting queer people, and I realized that they were wonderful people and that what I had been taught was completely wrong and unkind and concerning.
Writing it as part memoir, how did that impact the writerly choices that you were making in terms of how to depict this world of the homeschool cult, like what you chose to keep in and what things maybe you chose to keep out?
Yeah. I wanted to write it as gently as I could and hopefully make it a healing experience for people with religious trauma. And I think that people have appreciated that. I actually self-published the book last year, and then it got picked up by Quirk Books, so it's being republished this year. But I've gotten so many emails and met people who have said that they were almost worried to pick it up because it can be such traumatic feelings to tap into, but they found it really healing. And I really tried to lean into the healing side of things, even though it does get dark and traumatic at times. I really tried to make it as bright and healing as possible, because I think ultimately we're all trying to look forward towards joy and the joy that being ourselves has brought to our lives, instead of, staying on what was hard about our upbringing.
Yeah. I could project onto that. For you, as you were writing, what did bright and healing mean for you?
I think the idea that realizing that I am queer and accepting that about myself has brought so much happiness and healing to myself. And looking towards the joy that has and the freedom that has come from accepting my queerness, when I was told it would bring me nothing but shame and sorrow, and that was completely untrue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What resonates for me, again, different experience. I'm Armenian American, and so like my family, grandparents and great-grandparents survived the genocide, which was in part perpetrated because of their Christian faith tradition. And so growing up, it was this idea of, well, you can't be queer, because we need to, repopulate the Armenian, community, but also like that's anti-Christian, and therefore if you're queer, then you're not only you're anti-Christian, you're anti-Armenian, so you're not even part of the Armenian community anymore, which is like I can't say what that is on air thanks to the FCC. But how did that, for you as you were having your own queer awakening, how did that shape your family relationships? Because for me, it put a huge strain on the relationship for years, and there was like estrangement as well. So if you'd like to answer that question, I don't want to put you on the spot there. The queer awakening shaped the relationships with your family.
It's definitely strained things, and I, without getting into specifics, it's definitely made things hard. But I will say that the community and family that I've gained, like the found family, has been better than what I lost.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that you don't realize it, right? When you're first getting started, that there's that idea of found family, and then you start experiencing it, and you're like, oh my goodness,
Yeah, yeah,
it's such a joy.
yeah. And I think that even though, most people didn't grow up in a classified, certified cult like I did, that idea of if I leave this group, who will accept me is a
Mhm.
common feeling that a lot of people can relate to.
Absolutely. I found, and I'm just an essayist, so I'm not to the level of a writer that you are, but I found when I write essays, part of the writing process, I'll end up like realizing something about myself, or things
Yes.
sort of like click into place, and I'll be like, oh, yeah, that was what I was thinking, wasn't it? Did the same thing happen for you as you were writing your novel?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't write this setting out to publish it. I think I started writing it for myself.
Interesting.
And I all along told myself, I don't have to publish it. I can just bury it under a tree and move on. But when I had finished writing it and I had some people close to me read it, hearing from them how validating it felt to read that and feel seen was really validating for me because it felt so alone and like these were thoughts and feelings that I felt like only I had had, and I hadn't seen it reflected in literature, even as someone who reads a lot of queer fiction for my job. So that really encouraged me to go ahead and put it out there, and it's been so validating for other people, but also for me to realize that we were not alone in what felt like such an isolating experience.
Right. If you are just joining us, we are talking with Natalie Naudus, an Audie and Earphones award-winning audiobook narrator whose debut novel, Gay the Pray Away, comes out May 20th. To follow up on that, Natalie, how do you talk with folks who are trying to untangle the relationship between religious trauma and queerness right now, particularly as you're trying to do it in your novel through that queer, or through that, well, obviously queer, but that healing, joyful lens?
I think for me, a really big part of healing my inner child was becoming a parent myself. And I'm not saying that's how
Mm.
everyone should heal their trauma,
Yeah.
but interacting with my children and having that instinct to fall back on the way that I was parented, and then realizing, no, they don't deserve that. They're not giving me a hard time. They're having a hard time, and they deserve gentleness and compassion and patience. Realizing that and giving that to my children has helped heal my inner child and realize that I deserved that. And I deserved kindness and compassion as a child, even as an adult, it was still in my mind that maybe I deserved to be treated that way. Maybe I deserved to be spanked and belittled and told that I was wrong and sinful. But being a parent, I see how hurtful that is, and I can't imagine doing that to my kids. Um, so I guess the idea of parenting your inner child and being kind to yourself and going back and saying, hey, you didn't deserve that. You were fine. It was the circumstances around you that were the problem, and finding safety and healing in that.
I love how you phrase that. I remember in my own therapeutic journey, when one of my therapists was like, let's talk to younger John, and I was
Mhm.
like, what do you mean? Like, but the tuning into that experience, and even like they used a very narrative format to do that therapeutic process is just so um, healing
Yeah.
and tuning to that. And I think folks are like, well, let's just deal with the now and try to get through it, and then quote unquote move on. And so I love
Mm.
how you're framing that parenting the inner child is
Mm.
so important and so possible, right,
Yeah.
for folks to do. In every writing class, we learn to read, right, to learn how to write. You've narrated a lot of books,
Yeah.
400. So talk to me about how narrating shaped your own writing life.
Yeah, I think that because I do read so much for work, I was hesitant to write my own book because it feels like there's so many out there already, so many talented writers. What do I have to add to the pile? But I think it made me really dig deep and write what I felt I had the most to say about. And I think that most people have a thing or two that they are the most qualified to talk about. And I feel like I really went with that instead of um, trying to write to market or something, that would be just delightful for everybody or fun. I really wrote what specifically I feel like I needed. And I have been so happy to find that other people felt like they needed that too. And it was something that hadn't been written. So
Did you, not to put you on the spot, do you ever find like, because when I read books and I'm doing that, like I'm reading this because I want to write this, and I'm like, oh well, I would have written that differently, or I would have done this, differently. Did you find that as you were reading and narrating all these books, you're like, well, if I ever get to write this, I would actually choose to write it this particular way?
When I'm recording, I feel like my job is not to judge the work at all. I'm the waiter. I'm delivering the meal to the listener. So I don't judge it. I am just performing it to the best of my abilities. And I do think I have a greater appreciation for writers and how much care they put into their books, especially after I've been through so many rounds of edits. There's a lot of love and care and devotion that goes into it, and I respect the hell out of authors.
Well, this is why you are an award-winning and in-demand narrator of 400 titles. I have to fit in a break here. We're going to have a lot more to talk with Natalie about her new novel coming out May 20th, Gay the Prey Away. Keep it tuned to The Gailey Show. Be sure to follow us on Blue Sky for ticket giveaways and more progressive news and analysis. You can find us on at thegaileyshow.org on Blue Sky. Stay tuned, more to come. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I am your host, John Parker. 9 minutes before the top of the hour, we're talking with Natalie Naudus, an Audie and Earphones award-winning audiobook narrator whose debut novel, Gay the Prey Away, comes out on May 20th. Natalie, okay, I know this is like an obvious question. I'm sure you've answered this like a million times now, and you're going to answer it a million times more. But I want to ask, what was the experience of narrating your own novel? I'm assuming you did.
Yeah, I did. I recorded my own audiobook, of course. It was great. I definitely had to go slower with it because it's very personal, and I ended up crying quite a bit. But from the sense that I knew where my own sentences were going, it was a breeze to narrate. I don't have to stop and, oh, that wasn't going where I thought it was. It came from my brain, and it worked well with coming out of my mouth.
I imagine there's a different mindset when you come into narrating a book. Did you find yourself sort of going into that more professional narrator role, or did you still see yourself as like, I'm reading my own work? Does that make sense, the way that I'm phrasing that question?
Yeah, I think both. I definitely had a deeper connection to it and larger sense of the character arc because it's my character. So I think that I tried to play more of a character arc with Valerie, the main character, starting out very sheltered and careful and worried, and kind of growing and coming into herself as the book goes on.
It must have been, one of the editing advice that you also get like in writing school, right? Is like, read your work out loud, and you'll be able to hear like where things are, like it's like if it's stumbling here, then you got to rework the sentences. And I imagine that must have been just an extra special part of the writing process for you.
Yes, definitely. I caught a couple typos that were still left.
I want to return to the idea of queer joy, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Where you're finding queer joy in your own life, and how that can be like a balm, an act of resistance in the difficult times that we are living through right now.
Yeah. I think that growing up the way that I did, a lot of my life has been about looking for what feels best for myself without concerning myself with what I'm told I'm supposed to do. And that worked for getting me out of my childhood, and it's still working for getting me out of maybe what the societal mainstream is. I've been married to a man for 14 years, and about 2 years ago, we opened our marriage, and I have a partner now who I've been with for 2 years. And realizing that I don't have to follow the rules that even unwritten seem to be in existence, and that I can find happiness and queer joy in living my life the way that makes sense for us. And like we're so happy, and I love my partner and her kids, and they come over and hang out with my kids, and it's just like a big happy poly family. And it's just something that I didn't know was possible. Nobody told me it was an option. And it's just wonderful to find joy and happiness from within.
Yeah, I'm in a three relationship or relationship or throuple, whatever the right word is
Yeah.
for that. And you don't get, no one tells you about these things when
Yeah.
you're either growing up or even as, an adult. And then the option presents itself and you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is liberating.
Yeah. Everyone's like, you can do A or B. And it's like, well, what if I did C?
Right? Yes. Best of both worlds.
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
it was. Okay, so you started life as an opera singer?
Yeah. I went to music school for my undergrad, and then I got a master's in opera and ended up recording audiobooks, which is a much better fit, and it pays much better than opera singing.
Does it really?
I mean, opera singing can pay well, but it's for like just a few people. It's not
Right.
not a thriving industry like audiobooks are.
No, I can't imagine. No. Did you have particular composers or pieces that you love to sing?
I am a mezzo soprano, which they call them the witches, the bitches, and the britches. They sing. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
We'll beep that out if we can.
Okay, so they sing mostly in operas like old ladies, crones, and then pants rolls. So it wasn't the most fulfilling.
Pants rolls?
Like in like Mozart, Marriage of Figaro, there's a young man who's usually sung by a mezzo soprano in pants. They call
Ah,
them trouser rolls or pants rolls. And it's funny, when I was looking back on pictures of me, I have all these pictures of me like in suits, pretending to be a dude, like enjoying flirting with pretty girls on stage. And I was like, why did I like that so much? Now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. But the thing that I love about audiobooks is that I get to be everybody. On stage, it was like I spent a lot of time, like I would always wear knee pads because I was always kneeling a lot while other people were singing, moving props. Anyways, I get to be everybody now. And I get to be the main character and the villain and all the side characters. It's great.
I imagine the breath work that you have to learn as an opera singer probably comes in well when you're
Absolutely.
recording as a narrator.
Yeah, it's a perfect fit. And I realize when I sometimes coach, that the vocal range and the endurance and the ability to change the colors and the placement of my voice has prepared me perfectly for this work, for sure.
And why you have recorded 400 titles and are award winning. Do you have any titles that you're narrating coming up here?
I do. I have the sequel to Gaze Upon Wicked Gods by Molly Chang that I'm recording. I have a lot of stuff. It's
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, how can folks connect with you online to pre-order your book and also to stay tuned to your upcoming narrations?
Yeah, I'm at Natalie Naudus, NATALIENAUDUS, on Instagram and TikTok and everywhere. And I also have a Patreon of spicy sapphic stories that I write and produce with my girlfriend.
Oh, that's right. We're running out of time. Darn it. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for joining us here on The Gaily Show.
Thanks for having me.
We are going to have links to all of that in our show notes and on our website, how to pre-order Gay the Prey Away, and to connect on social media with Natalie. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Stay tuned. The Matt McNeil Show is up next. After that, Native Roots Radio. Be sure to tune in Saturday afternoon for a full Pride on AM 950 programming. We look forward to having you there. And until next Monday, keep it queer, America.